Time, space in images with SpazioTempism. Hello, today we will address space and time represented in images. The bi-dimensional surface on which the artist creates his work corresponds to the plane in which is enclosed the image that represents space and time. With this representation, we will analyze how space and time is represented in art in order to introduce the latest artistic concept. SpazioTempism is a concept that, with images, represents contemporaneously the dimension of space and time that in that moment lives as that subject represented. Now we will run through part of the history of art to see, over the course of years, how the representation of space and time evolved. The representation of space in images, from early surfaces used to receive an image, whether they be stone, wood, walls, paper, canvas, glass, surfaces light, sensitive, or digital. When this is filled with signs and colors, it acquires the significant thought of the artist. The significance of an image on a flat surface can be realistic, abstract, imaginative, illusionistic, etc. However, it will always remain a flat surface, two-dimensional. To represent the three-dimensional on a two-dimensional support, the artist is forced to turn to illusionistic means that permit who observes the work to identify the third dimension. That is the depth. Multiple have been the surfaces used in the history of images to represent the third dimension, but undoubtedly the best is the perspective system of Filippo Brunelleschi, then perfected by other artists, among whom Piero della Francesca in his Flagellation of Christ, 1460. With the perspective, the maximum revelation of depth is obtained. Now we will see how time is represented in images. In painting, as in other graphic disciplines, it is not possible to represent completely the passage of physical time. The time represented is that of emotions, while physical time is only that of the moment depicted. Therefore, in paintings, visible time is the immediate time of the scene represented. Always the need has been felt to represent completely time in images, and various systems were contrived to simulate its passing. The most common of the representations of time is that of tales, with a sequence of images, that is, relating episodes distant from each other in time, represented in separate areas, but present on a single surface to simulate a story over time. A typical example is the Passion of Christ by Hans Memling in 1470. Futurism and Cubism are the historic avant-garde in the early 1900s, which most largely explored the aspect of time represented in images. Futurism tried to simulate graphically the passing of time, isolating the succession of movements, as in Girl Running on a Balcony by Giacomo Balla. Diversely, Cubism, that observes an object from different viewpoints and represents them on a flat surface, leaving to the observer the task of mentally reconstructing the subject itself. in its whole three-dimensionality, where the representation of time is that given by the mental reconstruction of the subject. The picture of Picasso, Les Demoiselles d'Avignon, is representative in full of the Cubist concept. From these analyses, one can affirm that space in an image is represented in various ways, but primarily only that perspective seen from one position is used. Time is represented essentially as an instant, as time that does not exist, if not only time of emotions. We will examine the simultaneousness of space-time. To explore contemporaneously space and time, we analyze the analysis of the philosopher, semiotician, and maximum theoretician of space-time in images, Pavel Alexandrovich Florensky, who stated, and I quote, "The visual essence of motion consists in the fact that not only one point of view, one horizon, one scale of measurement are observed, while these three units presuppose at its foundation of the perspective projection of the world. Therefore, according to Florensky, one observes space, time, spatial and temporal horizons, distances, weights, volumes, speeds, directions, masses, and other, which makes us perceive the world in which we are immersed." The thought expressed by Florensky is relative to the analysis of the perception of movement of the subject in space and time. Adding to this analysis also the space-temporal displacement of the point of observation completes the perspective vision in the concept of space-time lived, conceptualized for the artist component in SpazioTempism, the term which was used by Enzo Trifolelli in 2010 and was first seen in his work in 2011. For the first time in the history of images, the passing of time in space was represented on a bidimensional surface. Space-tempism, SpazioTempismo. Space-tempism is the concept of representing contemporaneously space and time. This concept of representing an image, contrarily to all previous attempts, explores truly space and time. The artist, moving in the space around the subject, explores its various perspectives, representing them in a single work, with images on flat surfaces, positioned in the space of fruition. The work thus composed forces the viewer to travel the same spaces and times lived by the artist and the subject, in a new space-temporal dimension never before represented. For the first time, the graphic artwork or other work executed on a flat surface to be seen cannot be hung on a wall, because both sides are filled with signs and colors, representing different spaces and times. Moving through space and physical time in the viewing of the work is like discovering the future of the work. In creating the work, the first images that artist makes represent the present the observer is living, as also the space in which he is immersed. This first image forces the viewer to explore the successive space. That is, the image represented on the other side of the work. To discover it, he must travel through space and go to the successive time represented, which, if passed through faster than the work requires, is like anticipating time, or moving in the future of the time inserted in the representation. In the wholeness of the work, the artist can represent also not consecutive time and space with respect to the first image, making a space-temporal leap never represented in a work. The space temporal dimensions, the emotions, the tensions, and other characteristics present in space-tempism works do not give the sum of the values in the single surfaces, but give back the multiplicative result and synergy of their sum. The sign of the traces left in the space-tempism work is not only the sum of material and physical, but also a single sign released from the subconscious of the viewer. This sign can coincide with that inspired in the artist during the actual creating of the work, but can also be a new sign which is generated in the viewer, in function with the space-temporal deformation that he brings in transversing the spaces more or less near the work, and at the speed of the displacement, dilating or compressing in this way physical space and time of the vision and of the emotions. With space-tempism, SpazioTempismo, the dream comes true. The fourth dimension, that is, time, is finally represented on a bidimensional surface, together with the representation of space. I thank you for your kind attention. Until our next meeting.